I think we do know we're flirting with serious trouble. We've done something pretty extreme, and we don't know how bad the troubles will be, whether we're going to be like Japan or something a lot worse. And what makes life interesting is we don't know how it's going to work out. I think we also know that some of our earlier fears were overblown.
The wise billionaire and the vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, Charlie Munger, has been warning investors about the effects of inflation and what could potentially be happening in the near future. In his recent interviews, he expressed his concerns about the excessive money printing that has occurred in recent years. He believes that if this trend continues in the near future, it could lead to far more severe consequences than just high inflation. Charlie Munger gave examples and drew parallels to what happened in different countries in the world where such excessive printing of money has occurred. Some of these countries managed to stabilize and keep their economies under control fairly successfully, like what Japan did, for example. But there are also a lot of other places in the world where things became far worse than what was initially planned for, like what happened in several countries in Latin America recently and in many countries throughout history. And even though the dollar in the US still has the world reserve currency status, which very much reduces the negative effects of printing too much money due to the global demand for it, such monetary policies usually do not end very well. And that's what the billionaire investor Charlie Munger talked about in his recent interviews. But what are the main important things that he warned us about? And what options do investors have to protect themselves from what could potentially be happening in the future, according to him? Now, Charlie Munger explained the problem of too much money printing in the US, and he also referred to what happened and still happening in Latin America. The inflation issues that they are facing today have been persistent in recent years, with many countries struggling to keep it under control. For example, if we take a look at Venezuela's economy, where they have the highest inflation rate in the world with nearly a 400% inflation rate, their situation does not look very promising. To put things into perspective, a fast meal in Venezuela could cost 20 million in their own currency, and there are millions of people who have left the country in recent years, with the amount of households living under the poverty line has been surpassing 90% according to some reports. All of this was a direct result of bad policies and an excessive amount of printing of their own currency. Other countries in the region also have similar problems, but with a lot lower inflation numbers. And there are only a few countries where they had their inflation rates close to 2%, which is what central banks usually aim for.
Think of all the Latin American countries that print too much money. They get strongmen and so forth. That's what Plato said happened in the early Greek city-state democracies. One person, one vote, a lot of equality, and you get demagogues, and the demagogues lather up the population, and pretty soon you don't have your democracy anymore. I don't think that was a crazy idea on Plato's part. I think that accurately described what happened in Greece way back then, and it's happened again and again and again in Latin America. We don't want to go there. At least I don't.
Charlie Munger also clearly mentioned how the ancient Greek philosopher Plato more than 2,300 years ago described and explained what happens with democracies over time. Plato concluded that democracies risk bringing dictators and demagogues to power. He described that this is part of the natural cycles of societies and that dictatorships naturally arises out of democracy, which was clearly stated in some of his quotes. Charlie Munger has also been asked about index funds and huge asset management firms like Vanguard and BlackRock and their increasing influence on corporate boards and public companies. This question was raised because of the increasing voting power of such index funds due to the fact that they control and own trillions of dollars worth of shares in public companies in the US and around the world as well. And here was his opinion and response to that question.
Well, of course it's a very serious issue because it's an enormous amount of power. And for a while, all these index funds got the feeling they were suddenly made godlike to clean up the world. But Vanguard has retreated from that policy, and I think wisely so. And I have some hope that Larry Fink will follow. I don't think it's smart for these index funds to try and influence the policy and politics of the country just because they're an index fund. I think they should be satisfied to eliminate some of the folly from investment management and do a better job for their clients, which I think they do very well. And I think they should be pleased with that and not try and run the whole damn country as a matter of corporate governance. I have no feeling that anybody at Vanguard or Larry Fink's operation has any special genius at how American corporations ought to be run. And to the extent they ask Berkshire to do this or that, I wish they'd stop.
Ask Berkshire to do what? To follow their guidance?
Yeah. I'm just not interested in their views as to how Berkshire should behave.
Now, Charlie Munger also talks about how one could hedge against inflation despite the fact that it is difficult to completely eliminate its negative effects. He says that it's enough for an investor to have 4 quality companies if he wants to get above average returns, and anything more than that is going to be more problematic than anything else. If we take a look at Charlie and Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway holdings from their recent 13F filings, we can see that their top 4 investments make up around 74% of Berkshire Hathaway's total portfolio value, which indicates how heavily the portfolio is concentrated in a few quality companies. However, when it comes to Charlie Munger's personal portfolio specifically, his investments range from real estate to the Daily Journal and a couple of other stocks, according to him.
It may be that you have to choose the least bad of a bunch of options. That frequently happens in human decision making. And the Mungers have Berkshire stock, Costco stock, Chinese stock, Sululu, a little bit of Daily Journal stock, and a bunch of apartment houses. Do I think that's perfect? No. Do I think it's okay? Yes. I think the great lesson from the Mungers is you don't need all this damn diversification. That's plenty of, you're lucky if you've got 4 good assets. I think the finance professors and that sell the idea that perfect diversification is professional investment. If you're trying to do better than average, you're lucky if you have 4 things to buy. And to ask for 20 is really asking for egg in your beer. It's very few people can have enough brains to get 20 good investments.
Now, it is worth mentioning that Berkshire Hathaway has been sitting on a large pile of cash for the last decade or so. However, right now this amount is at near record high, with over $147 billion that the company holds in cash and in liquid assets like short-term treasury bills. The main reason for that is to have the money as a safety net for Berkshire Hathaway and its shareholders, and also due to the fact that Charlie said that there is nothing they can stand buying. Especially when he also stated a while ago that the markets are overvalued and even crazier than the dot-com bubble. But overall, Charlie Munger's recent comments about the state of the economy and the too much printing of money that has been happening in recent years clearly indicate his concerns, particularly when we know that a persistent high inflation tends to bring even bigger social and political problems with it if it continues in this way. Like what we saw happening many times before throughout history, from the Roman Empire hundreds of years ago to the Weimar Republic in Germany almost exactly 100 years ago. So that was it for this video. If you found this helpful, you can click here to watch this one. Other than that, make sure to leave a thumbs up and to subscribe to the channel. And with that being said, see you in the next one.